Hello, my name is Leo, and welcome to a new video by Blauw Films. It seems to have been a very long time since I uploaded last. We got very busy to actually finish some of the shots of Syntactic Labyrinths. We are very close to actually getting something that looks like anything at all. So I'm sorry for the wait, but here we go, new tutorial. This time we're gonna be quickly compositing and finishing this shot over here. Before we start, you know the deal, go to artstation.com/lmverkoelen/store and have a look over here. You can download the planets here, they cost $2. We got a bunch of other stuff. The stars over here, nobody seems to understand why these stars are actually cool. These have been extracted from 23,350 NASA stars from a real picture, and then they have been repopulated. And because they're EXR files, we can use them pretty nicely. Well, let's get into After Effects and let's get this going. Right here inside of After Effects, we can see I have imported some of the assets here. If I were to look at my timeline now, I have these layers over here, which are all the Organic Starfield plates. The only thing they're doing is I've set them to add, and then I've duplicated one of these layers, like the layer 92 over here. I've duplicated that multiple times to get some stars that are a bit brighter. Think of them as either clusters or think of them as planets. Now, after that, I have the Venus that's sitting right on top, and I've rendered this in Corona Renderer 7, coming straight out of Cinema 4D. And then I have the library designed by Fraser McPhee. Go check out his work, it's really cool, really clean design. We got some lights inside of here. Also shout out to Eric for the cinematography and the lighting. So yeah, now we're gonna add a caustics pass right on top, just to bring out a bit more of the detail that gets lost in between these areas. And then we have a bloom and glare pass that's going right on top. If you can see, we're getting a streak over here, which is basically, because we're not at 100%, you are getting some of the blown out white areas that get compressed into these weird glitchy green bits. First of all, we're gonna make a adjustment layer in between the stars, and we're gonna try to blur them out a little bit until we get some kind of fall off. Now, here's the thing, you don't want to have a fall off that's in space, but you do want to feel like there's a fall off in between the stars and the glass of your lens. That's really the only kind of thing that you can play with in space, unless you are right inside of a nebula or if you're inside of something that has a bunch of, atmosphere in there. Here, it's just close to Venus. So I'm just gonna add a camera lens blur effect. Repeat edge pixels in case we have any stars by the edges. And here we can play with the aspect ratio. I know that I used 0.5 inside of Corona Renderer, so we're gonna do that here as well. Now, if we were to zoom in a bit, you can see that ours is a little bit of a a little bit of a hexagon. So I am gonna increase this to about 60-70%. That makes it feel a little bit more like we have a lens with more blades, and it just feels a bit more natural. Now I am gonna set this to screen, but also we're working on 32-bit, so let's go for add. There you go. As you can see here, we can see the same thing again, the kind of glitchy pattern that you get when you are overexposing it, not at 100%. I'm gonna lower the adjustment layer to about 25%. Here we go, very clean. Maybe even a bit lower, something like 15. Alright, the next thing I want to do is start working a bit on this planet. I am gonna be soloing out just the planet by unsoloing all the other stuff. I'm gonna duplicate Venus and I'm gonna create an exclusion mat for just the edges of this atmosphere. So if you've seen any of the planet tutorials before, you know that basically you just want to have one version that's black and one version that's white, and then you blur them out to create some kind of edge in the middle. Now how you want to do that is really open to you. You could go color correction, tint, take the white one, make it black, and now you have a black thing. Or you could go to effect, generate, fill, and then you could make this black. Both of them work, it really doesn't matter. But either way, make a duplicate of it and then turn that white which is like one action fewer than using a tint effect, which is why I use a fill effect, I guess. I don't know. Either way, create a layer new solid, and we're making that black just to keep it behind both of our layers. Now I'm taking the top layer and I'm adding a effect, Gaussian blur. Here you go. And now I am taking the black layer, moving it up top. I'm giving this a little bit of a Gaussian blur. Here you go. And now I'm gonna go layer, new adjustment layer, effect, and then you just wanna brighten this up in a nice way. So because we have 32 bits right here, I'm gonna go for an exposure effect. I feel like I get a bit more of the desired effect of the fall off between white and black. If you are a masters of the curves tool, go use that. I am now gonna select black solid all the way to adjustment layer, Command Shift C to pre-compose it, and now we have a matte. I'm gonna select the adjustment layer and Luma-mask the pre-comp, which I will quickly call Luma. Now the idea of the blur atmosphere is that when you look at pictures of space, you have to think of how big these planets really are in reality. And it's not like, because I've heard people say like, oh, but the thing is so far away, so shouldn't everything be in infinity? Shouldn't everything just be in focus? And the thing is, no, not really, because you have to think about from where you're shooting this. You are probably moving incredibly fast, even though nothing really seems to be moving. So there's definitely a bunch of calibration that has to be done. Plus, some of these planets are so big that they don't even fit on the sensor of one camera, which then uses multiple takes that then get stitched together. So you always have some kind of artifacting going on. And if you look at the pictures, the atmosphere edge to the far distance always seems to have some inconsistencies in the focus. So yeah, there you go, we're adding it. I am now bringing back some of these stars, and I'm gonna try to judge how bright this planet would have to be. I am not sure if our exposure is feeling right to me. I'm gonna select the planet and I'm gonna add a exposure effect. I'm slowly gonna be increasing the exposure. Now, someone is gonna say, oh my god, everything looks completely blown out. How could you do this to the shot? Now, the thing is, we have to remember what it is we're shooting. We are shooting Venus, which is supposedly the brightest planet in our solar system. If you were to expose it correctly to Venus, you probably could, but then everything else, including the ship, would be so dark that you wouldn't see anything. So in this example, I'm trying to get quite a bit of exposure without crunching into these values over here. I still want to have this. Okay, so you see, that was a bit too far. I want to bring it closer. I want to bring it a bit closer, but I do want to have a very hot edge over there. Okay, even a bit less. Cool. Now the next thing I'm doing is I'm duplicating the planet and I am resetting the exposure effect and I'm bringing down the gamma. I'm now adding a fast box blur effect. Now this is about the amount of blur I would like to have. I'm gonna duplicate that layer and I'm gonna increase the blur to about 150. And now I'm gonna duplicate it one more time, bring it all the way up to 450. This obviously depends on your footage resolution. I'm using these huge values because my composition is 3600 wide, but it would obviously depend on your composition. I'm gonna set the top one to add and the second one to add as well. Bottom one can be set to add. I'm gonna turn on the Venus below and now we can really lower these opacities. Now I'm gonna go one by one. Cool, that seems to be about it. Now let's turn on the library. All right, so we have a very bright planet with a not so bright ship at this point. What I am gonna do with the ship selected, I'm gonna select a exposure effect and I'm gonna bring the exposure down. I'm gonna shift this to quarter resolution. I am hovering over this white value over here to check the top right corner of my screen. Right over here where it says RGB and A, you basically have a live color picker of your hue, saturation, etc. Right here, our white value is about 8, and at the bottom, our white value is about 0.4. That really tells you something about this material. What I would like to do is keep it somewhere there for now. I'm gonna duplicate this layer and I'm gonna increase it a little bit, somewhere here. Now, what I would like to do is just roughly mask out this section and just feather it out a bit. Now I'm gonna turn on the caustics. There you go. Now that is what's gonna be giving us the life in the dark areas, as you can see. We could essentially even bring up the caustics a little bit. Sorry, wrong layer. If we really want to get some of that information there, we'll have to be checking for noise every once in a while. And then afterwards, I'm gonna be adding the final glow effect on top, which I am gonna be decreasing the exposure of as well, which I'm increasing the gamma correction of a little bit so that this glow just blooms out a little bit more. And I feel like that way the values in the middle don't feel too extreme, but a bit more balanced. Alright, all the layers selected. There we go. Command-Shift-C to pre-compose. I'm importing some kind of film grain. I'm dragging this on top. I'm now gonna be duplicating the footage 3 times, and I'm gonna be applying a shift channels effect. With the bottom one selected, I'm gonna turn off green, turn off blue. With the second one, I'm gonna be turning off green and turning off blue. And with the third one, I'm turning off red and I'm turning off green. Select second and the third one, set them to add. And now you should essentially have your original shot back. And then with the top 2 selected, I'm gonna go to Distort Optics Compensation, Reverse Lens Distortion, and give it like something until the stars start to go funky. You basically want to add some chromatic aberration to your shot based on how far away these things are, but I don't want to be creating duplicates, so something like 2 might already be enough. Yeah, that's enough. Inside of this layer, one thing I would still like to do is create a duplicate of the black layer and a duplicate of the planet, and I'm gonna be deleting all the effects from it. And then I'm gonna be dragging the black solid underneath the duplicate, and I'm gonna say Luma-matte inverted. And if I get those 2 and drag them to the top, you'll see I have made a cutout from that section. Now, why would I want to do that? It's basically to then, as you can see here, exclude some of these stars from the blur. Now, the only thing you have to do is then introduce a little bit of blur, which I would go by using a camera lens blur, because you can really dial in these tiny values. Then you would want to take those 2 layers and pre-compose them. Hit OK. And I'm going to be adding a camera lens blur just to add and control that really tiny detail at the end. Get a very fine. Cool. Now it's just a matter of increasing it until we are happy. All right. I'm going to add a new adjustment layer. Double click the ellipse mask tool. Select one of these points with shift selected so you can get to these Bezier arms. And I'm going to do that on all sides. I'm going to set the mask to subtract and give it about 200 pixels. I'm going to add a camera lens blur effect, and I'm going to be adding a exposure effect. I'm going to keep the camera lens blur very, very subtle. Now finally I'm adding a adjustment layer with a color correction tritone effect. Just making my highlights a little bit more yellow, my midtones a little bit more murky green, and my shadows a little bit bluish purple. And then I'm going to be blending it 96% with the original. There we go. The one thing I feel we should do is inside of here, I'm gonna select the caustics. I'm duplicating the caustics and I'm making a mask just around the exterior sensor of the ship. I'm gonna be increasing the exposure quite a lot. There we go. And now we can see some more of that detail right by the edge of it. Cool. That makes me happy. Now the film grain goes on top. I'm setting that to soft light and I'm adding a curves effect to just bring down the exposure a little bit. Somewhere here. That looks nice. And that's it. That's basically compositing this scene. I haven't rendered the full shot yet, but once it's fully rendered, I'm gonna show you how to apply these same effects to the 3D version of the shot. And yeah, that's about it. So here it is. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for waiting and not unsubscribing and sticking to the channel. We got way too many things coming up, so I'm excited to share them with you whenever we get to them. More videos coming soon, so yeah. Be sure to come to the ArtStation store. Organic Starfields, really cool stuff. Planets, really cool stuff. There's some free products there, so, you know, just come to the store in general. Cheers! Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.